Hello and welcome to Film School Dropout. I am your host, Ben Friedman, and today's episode, this was actually one of the earliest episodes that I recorded. Jeff Sneider is joining me today. He is somebody that I have worked with actually in the past. He had come on my channel, my old podcast, I should say, to do Moonrise Kingdom, so I was really glad to have him back launching Film School Dropout. He joined me for Martin Scorsese's The Departed, which is, of course, the film that wins Martin Scorsese his Best Picture and Best Director prize at the Academy Awards. I'm a big Jeff Sneider fan, and he brings in the heat, and he brings in the energy, and he brings in the controversy as only Jeff can. I love Jeff. He is such a just cool dude, someone who's always been really nice to me. So I'm always honored to have him on my show. I always enjoy talking to him, and he's just one of the friendliest guys that I've met in this industry. Jeff Sneider has currently been going with some, we'll just call it some work changes. You can read all about that on his Twitter. He's very vocal and honest, and that's one of the qualities that I love about Jeff. And so he may mention it a few times. I tried to edit out any mentions of his previous work as a sign of respect to him, but if I missed any, I do apologize. There's also this weird thing where halfway through our Zoom just cut out and we had to reload it. So if there's a weird just kind of break in the middle, I tried editing, fixing it as best as I can. You may notice that it is part one and part two and it's kind of stitched together. I do apologize for that, I should say. But with that all said, welcome to Film School Dropout. I'm your host, Ben Friedman, and thank you for joining me today for The Departed. Hello, and welcome to the Beniverse Movie Channel, where for this month, we are focusing on the filmography of the Martin Scorsese. This is, I think, day 18 of the series, and we had to get it. We had to get to the Oscar winner. We eventually were always going to lead here. All roads lead back to Boston, and we are doing The Departed. And my guest is maybe the most Boston man that I know on my Twitter feed, Jeff Sneider, film critic for LA Magazine. Jeff, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me, my man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I am a Boston boy, and believe it or not, worked on the movie that we're going to talk about today. Only for one shift, but I count it.
Yeah, you emailed me this, and I was just like, I never knew this about you. I'll have to dive into that in a second. But so there was a point, because you were previously, I did Wes Anderson, maybe like 2 years ago at this point. I don't remember how long ago, but I brought you on. And so when I was kind of formulating this guest list, I was trying to think, who am I going to have on? And I'm like, well, of course I'd want to have Jeff Sneider on again. I wonder what movie I give him. And I'm like, is The Departed too obvious of a choice to give Jeff? And I'm like, so I'm like looking at all the films and I'm just like, I started rewatching The Departed and I heard the Dropkick Murphys needle drop. And I'm like, no, I have to put in Jeff here.
Agreed. I would have been upset if someone else had gotten this episode. But wait, what are the other movies in the series? Now I'm curious.
Everyone.
Or can you give them away?
Everything. I am doing everything. I am doing every film he ever directed.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. So I'm
honored to be the guest on this one.
Yeah, like I said, I was wrestling with it where I'm just like, is it too obvious of an invite for Jeff? And then I'm just like, I can't not have him for this one.
What's my backup? What would have been my backup episode?
What was your? I think it was Goodfellas. I think I was looking at it and I was like, maybe Goodfellas. There was a part of me that was like, I feel like he'd be incredibly entertaining for Wolf of Wall Street. I was thinking like that line.
I'll give you the two. I would say Casino. I love Casino. I mean, listen, I love Goodfellas too, but like, there are probably people out there who could do better justice to Goodfellas. Like, go get. I'll introduce you to Glenn Kenny, who like wrote the book on Goodfellas. It's a great book, called Made Men, I think it is. And but I love Casino and I love Cape Fear.
I think I had that down for the list because I was thinking kind of the Fincher vibe for you. So I'm like, a serial killer movie just sounds right for you. And then, like I said, eventually I just had to think about it for a little bit longer. And I'm like, it's The Departed. And if I don't email him for The Departed, he will ask why I didn't ask about The Departed.
Had to do
And
it. Thank
and in your credit, as always, I send you an email, and within 5 minutes, I get a response, maybe 2 words, and it's just like, I'm on board. And I'm like, perfect.
you. Yeah. What
And
else?
so we're doing this. We're doing The
Keep me at
Departed,
home.
which I should just ask you before we actually dive into this. What is your relationship with Martin Scorsese as a filmmaker, as a person?
I'm a big Scorsese guy. I mean, those are like the movies when you come of age as a young man. It's like you got to watch Goodfellas, you got to watch Taxi Driver, you got to watch Raging Bull and Casino. I mean, he sort of helped define masculinity in a way,
Mhm.
along with maybe Tom Cruise and Schwarzenegger and Stallone and some of those guys. But it's I think he's a master. I think he is a maestro. Not everything that he makes is for me necessarily, but I will always go see anything that he directs because he commands such respect.
Yeah, there. You make this point right where because I'm doing the whole Scorsese watching everything right now, and it's all in preparation for Killers of the Flower Moon, which we're recording this in July. You haven't seen it yet at this moment, or
No, I wasn't a can. I missed it. I've heard great things about it. I've heard
I've
it's
heard
really
great things as well. Like, I'm really excited. I'm hoping San Francisco will get the screening in September. That's what I'm hearing rumors of. So I'm like hoping beyond hope that I get that screener. But going into this with Scorsese, like watching all of the movies, I've kind of realized, like, because there was a handful that I had missed before, there were some that I had never seen. And while watching the series, I was kind of just blown away, where I was just like, even the movies that don't fully work for me, there's something so interesting about them that no other filmmaker I've ever seen attempts to do what he does in a film. And that doesn't always mean I necessarily find it successful, but I always find it intriguing. And that's what I kind of love about this guy, where I'm just like, there is stuff of his that I'm not always necessarily the biggest fan of, but there's an audaciousness to every film that he makes. There's a respect to it.
his films have a certain unique energy, much like a Tarantino film or a Fincher film. And I think that's what makes him an auteur. Is he has his own style, and yet he can adapt that style for whatever story he's telling.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to summarize it. And I guess I should just ask you as well before we really jump into The Departed, because you're living in Boston in 2006. Is that correct?
I had just graduated from NYU in May 2006, and then I moved to Los Angeles upon graduating. So I had like a month at home, you
Okay,
know.
so but you are, because you move out. I'm trying to remember because I know you've talked about it before. You move out. You're lifelong Boston, right? Like, you were born and raised in Boston.
Not, I mean, the Boston suburbs. I
Yeah.
was born 15 minutes outside Boston. Yeah.
Mhm. And so with this movie specifically, do you remember the energy? And I guess this is also applicable for New York because this is where the film was largely shot. But do you remember that energy of people talking about The Departed? Because I'm too young at this age. I'm not following film criticism at all. I think
Yes.
2006, I'm like 7 or 8 when this movie debuts. So I'm not in tune with any of this. Like, was this a big deal when it came out for
It was
specifically the city?
huge. It was a huge deal for the city. Anytime Matt Damon was filming anything after Good Will Hunting, in the city, I think it was a huge deal. Like, oh, Matt's coming back. He's bringing Leo. Like, are you kidding me? Mark Wahlberg's here. So to have Damon and Wahlberg in one movie, I think had overwhelmed the city enough. My friend, who I'll name check on here, Matt Silverman, was a production assistant at the time. He'd had a little bit of experience, I think, and he got a gig, as the local PA or whatever, and he was able to get me on for one day basically. Before it was like the day before I left for Los Angeles to move out here. Which was so funny. It's like, I'm moving to LA to like go work on movies and stuff. But like that ended up being the only movie I think I've ever worked on. It was in Boston the day before.
Do you
Uh,
remember which scene you were on set for?
it was the scene under the bridge with Wahlberg and Leo and Martin Sheen.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. The confrontation they have.
that's right, yeah, exactly. But it was all there. I was with the second unit. So it was all like their doubles and stuff.
Mhm.
So I wasn't really with the stars or anything, but I was just so excited to be on the set of a Martin Scorsese movie. I think I did it was like a 4:30 to 4:30 shift.
Mhm.
Okay, I was passed out by 2:30 in the morning.
Mhm.
4:30 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. I think I had passed out on his set at 2 or 2:30. I was not a good PA, guys. I was not cut out for this job. And a large part of it was just standing underneath like a bridge in Lowell with like a walkie-talkie being security. It's like a rough part of Lowell too. Like, what is this? What is this walkie-talkie gonna do for me?
Do you remember the energy on set? Like, was there a certain just excitement, or was it kind of a normal, subdued set?
Actually, again, not that I've been on a ton of sets, but it actually felt like a very normal set, maybe because it was second unit. So it's not like you're dealing with the stars and the trailers and the makeup, it's the backs of people's heads and stuff. But you really saw what second unit crew did, and like the little things that come up. And it, I think that they didn't care how little their role was, right? There's no small enough job. We were all contributing to another movie by Martin Scorsese, which had everybody excited. And now I knew I was particularly excited because I'd seen Infernal Affairs. Have you seen Infernal Affairs?
I tried rewatching or watching it before I did this series. I just got caught up, so I never got the criteria. I have the Criterion collection to watch, and I still just haven't done it.
So I had seen Infernal Affairs prior to the Departed shooting and everything, and I loved it. So I was super excited about this.
Did you at that time? Because again, it's shooting probably whatever it's shooting 2005 2006. Was there any, and again, this is just the part of me just asking because I'm not around, reading slash the reviews of this stuff. Was there a feeling for you, maybe not even on set, but when that movie came out, where you're just like, this is the magic, this is going to be the Scorsese best picture winner? Or was it just like, because it's a
No,
very, yeah.
no. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if it was like actually 2005, and it was the day before I came out to LA, like for my internships, like junior going into senior year of college. I wonder if I worked on it, and then it was in post through 2005, top 2006. I totally forget. But anyways, I know Infernal Affairs had just come out the previous fall, so I think that was 2004. The question, remind me.
Oh yeah. So the question was, when this
Oh,
film comes
the
out, when you
award stuff.
first see it.
No, I don't think anybody realized that this was going to win Best Picture when the movie came out. Again, it all comes down to competition. This was an October release. It was, seen as more of a commercial play. It was a crime movie, which I don't think they were giving out Best Picture to a ton of crime movies around that time. And people thought it was going to be too violent for Academy voters, basically, and that was going to be a turnoff, particularly for female voters. So I think that this definitely was a big surprise when it won.
It's when I'm like looking back at the film criticism from that period. I was reading an article from SF Gate. I think I found an old Variety article that had released maybe like the day after it wins the Best Picture prize. And I was just so shocked, where people were almost like, oh, it was not only the foregone conclusion, but it was like for a while, it was just like, okay, this will never win. And there was even like the skepticism of it winning the day before, because it was just like, okay, but a film like this just isn't going to win. And then I look at its competition and I'm just like, this is like a pretty nothing year.
What did
Besides
it be? Letters from Iwo Jima?
Letters from Iwo Jima was probably its biggest competition. I think Little Miss Sunshine is nominated in the Best Picture. I know this is the year of Little Miss Sunshine. I don't remember if it gets the Best Picture nom. It gets the Alejandro Inarritu. Is that Babel? I think.
Yeah.
And then The Queen is the rounding out the competition.
Like, the Queen could have won, Babel could have won, a whole bunch of movies I think could have won. That's what I mean when it wasn't. I don't think it was like a sure thing at all.
Yeah, and
But you're
it's
in hindsight, no one's watching The Queen, no one's talking about Babel or Letters from Iwo Jima, but in the moment, you could see where the Academy might go in that direction.
yeah, that's the fun part for me when I'm going back and I'm reading about these races, because I'm just like, this anyone who was predicting anything but The Departed just seems foolish. But yet, like, everyone is kind of like writing about that, where they're like, I don't know if Scorsese, like, he has this history of getting ignored by the Academy. There's this crime element. This movie's really nasty. It's very over the top in a lot of sequences. It's a very just at times disgusting movie, and it's just not a film that wins it compared to some of the more prestigious.
Jack Nicholson waving around a dildo. Okay, it was not your surefire winner by any stretch. Clint Eastwood was so hot around that time, and like Letters is a good movie. It's not a movie I've ever rewatched. I don't know anyone who's gone back and rewatched Letters from Iwo Jima, but I remember that being a good movie.
This is a, like I said, not only a fun going back rewatching this. This was the first time I've seen this film in a decade. I think I saw this film. I'm trying to remember if this is my first Scorsese movie that I watched. I would say I watched this probably end of middle school, beginning of high school. So we're talking 2012, 2013 range.
Formative years.
Yeah, formative years, especially when it comes to Vera Farmiga in this movie. It was a very important time in my life with her in this movie. But I'm watching this movie, and the fun of going back and rewatching this movie after a decade was, of course, there's moments of this movie that I will never forget. And spoilers alert, we're spoiling this movie. I will never forget the moment when I'm watching it on my TV and Leonardo DiCaprio's character gets his head blown off. It's one of the, I think it was probably top 5 most shocking moments in a film I've still probably ever seen. Like, that caught me so off guard. And like, I remember obviously the ending, Mark Wahlberg getting his doing what he does to Matt Damon. I remember moments of it, but I didn't remember the twists, the turns of this movie. And I also just like didn't have as much of a relationship with certain of these actors that I've now had with this past decade. Where, 13, 14, I know who Matt Damon is. I'm following the Bourne trilogy. I've probably watched all the Bourne films by the time I see this movie. I know who Leonardo DiCaprio is. I'm not particularly familiar at this time at the age of 13 with Jack Nicholson's filmography. I'm not somebody who would say that I've ever known Alec Baldwin at this time outside of 30 Rock. Martin Sheen was certainly an actor that I didn't have a relationship with. Wahlberg is, I think at that point, Wahlberg is the guy from the other guys for me. And then, like, going back in a decade later, it's just like, it was such a fun rewatch of this movie where I was just like, everyone sings perfectly in this movie. I love the energy of this movie. And I'm just curious, do you remember your first time watching this movie in the movie theater?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, I think I went to a press screening. Because I think I still have press notes for this movie. And you're right, I was watching it sort of knowing the structure and the bare bones because I'd seen Infernal Affairs, but I didn't know how Scorsese was going to change that. I obviously knew he was going to do his own thing. So I was very caught off guard by that ending. Um, yeah, I remember I remember doing one of these in your seat. I don't know if my jaw actually fell, but it was it was surprising for sure. But it was all set up. It's all there when you go back and rewatch it. Like you can totally see that it didn't just it wasn't like some random thing.
Yeah, there's an element of this movie that I think sometimes gets lost over time because this is ends up being the movie that Scorsese wins Best Picture and his first and only Best Director win. And sometimes, and this is obviously the very much the I'm on film Twitter, even if I don't engage with it, I see it. Which there, I think there can be a perception if you're on film Twitter 24/7 that The Departed is an overrated like film that shouldn't have won Scorsese. And then like I watch it, and it's been a decade, so like even if I'm not engaging with it, even if I think the whole institution of Twitter is dumb, and I disagree with most of my colleagues, there is a little bit of that like energy that just accidentally like seeps into me. So when I'm gonna put this movie on rewatch, I'm just like, how does this movie hold up? Is there anything that I like don't remember liking? Is it now seeing most of other Scorsese films, I'm gonna think it's lesser? And to be honest, I
Right,
just love this movie.
right off the bat, there's racial slurs, there's homophobic slurs. You don't see movies like that too often anymore, and you don't see movies like that winning Best Picture.
And you don't see movies like that doing well on film Twitter.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. That's why it hasn't really aged so well among film Twitter, because film Twitter is so woke. Yes, this is a. It's not. I don't think it's a classic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's one of the most rewatchable Best Picture winners for sure, and it does still hold up. And like just like the cast is so incredible. I mean, name a better Best Picture cast. I don't. It's
That's,
like
I was wondering the exact same thing. I was going through and I'm just like, this cast, which I'll just read some of the bigger names in the movie: Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously, Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson, Mark Wahlberg, Martin Sheen, sorry, Vera Farmiga, Alec Baldwin, Ray Winstone, Anthony Anderson. And those are just like the big players. There's a few character actors that come in and out of the movie. Uh, there's, I believe, I'm trying to figure out remember which Wahlberg brother is in this movie. Like, there's a ton. But I mean, if you're just reading that cast, that is 10 big names. And Anderson's in this movie for a nothing part. I mean, and he's in the most memorable scene of the movie.
yeah, Anthony Anderson, James Badge Dale, Kevin Corrigan's a great character actor. And you're right, it's Robert Wahlberg.
Robert, that's it. I'm like, I don't think it's Donnie, but I know it's one of the Wahlbergs.
So yeah, just a very, very like entertaining cast from top to bottom, and I think that is why it has aged as well as it has.
I love that they're all going for it in this movie too. Scorsese can be a very reserved director, and he can get very nuanced performances out of his actors. And in this movie, it's very much, it feels unsafe in the way that these actors are on screen. I mean, everybody in this movie is a character in the best way possible. And it is the scene. And before we really jump into it, but since you mentioned it, it's this opening scene, which I was re-listening to the Rewatchables episode on The Departed, and Fennessy was having issues with this opening scene, kind of echoing the ideas where he's like, this scene's a little too long. The dialogue hasn't aged particularly great in this scene. And it was this moment where I just fully disagree with him. And usually I'm fairly good with Fennessy's takes. But this one was the one where I'm just like, this guy's the villain. And within like 1 minute, I understand fully who Jack Nicholson is as a human being, as this character of Frank Costello. Like, there's an ugliness to him. There's a almost entitlement to him. And there's just a pure drive of evil. And that's how he views the world and the way that he describes it. You have to take power. You have to do everything to climb, basically.
Right, no one's going to give it to you. You got to take it. Even the little offhand remark he throws at the counter girl, like, buy some makeup or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's these little scenes, these digs that he gets in. Like, that was one of my, and that's where I'm always trying to figure out, because I know Nicholson is kind of famously let loose in this movie, where he's just like, I'm going to make my decisions and I'm going to kind of improv a lot of this stuff. And there's that scene where he's talking to the 13-year-old girl, the daughter of the owner of the grocery store, whatever it is, the convenience store. And it's just that moment where he's like sexualizing her in a very uncomfortable, creepy way. And you're just like, I know who this guy is and I hate this guy. And he's also
really
intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, he's exactly preying on young boys and their insecurities and all that stuff, and grooming them, for a life of crime when they're older.
Which is very much key to this movie. And it's a part of this movie that is very much the subtext of this movie. Is this movie comes out 4 years after the Spotlight investigation. I believe the Spotlight investigation is like 2001, 2002. And you see that theme in this story with the relationship Nicholson has with Matt Damon. There is other instances of it where Nicholson will curse out nuns and priests in this movie. And that's a part of the movie that I found so rich on rewatch, because obviously Scorsese is a very Catholic filmmaker, for I think lack of a better term. And he's playing with these ideas, even if it's never at the forefront of this movie.
Did you freeze?
No, sorry. I thought you were jumping in.
No. Sorry, I was looking up something quick about the film. Sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I was talking about the Spotlight investigation, how that's all related to kind of how Nicholson is portrayed in this movie, I think to some degree.
Right. I mean, he's a father figure in a sense, but one with ill intentions.
Exactly. And before we go too far into this movie, I have a segment on it where I call it the hill to die on. It's your big bold claim on this movie. Maybe you've already touched on it, but Jeff, I'll do mine real quick. But so I wrote down from the crime story to the thematic sensibilities, the F bombs, the Catholic symbolism, troubled men caught at a crossroad in their life, to the soundtrack. The Departed is Martin Scorsese's the most Martin Scorsese film probably ever made, and I love it because of that. And it's a great fucking movie.
Ooh, that's tough. I I'm going to disagree.
You're going to disagree.
I feel like Goodfellas is the most smart Scorsese. Goodfellas feels like doing a rail. Not that
That's
I've ever done cocaine, but I feel like that is like the movie equivalent of what it would be like to do cocaine. Which to me, I think is the most like I don't know why I associate cocaine with Martin Scorsese, but I do, and that to me is the most Martin Scorsese ever Scorsese.
if you're talking about the movie that makes me feel like I've done cocaine, it's Wolf of Wall Street. By the end of that movie, I was rewatching it a few weeks ago, and I was just actually felt hungover. Like I've never had that feeling leaving watching a movie where I just leave it. I'm like, oh my god, I just feel gross. I feel like I've just gone through a long, long night. But what would be your like kill? What would be your big bold claim on this movie? It can be an actor, it can be a scene, it can be anything.
All right. I gotta
I'm
think about.
excited. You look nervous.
I was like, I don't. My big bold claim is that I don't know that I've ever. I don't know. If this is a claim though. Like I'm trying to get the assignment right. I don't know that I ever understood the address thing with Queenan's death.
Oh, because he tells him the wrong address, right?
Right, he tells him the wrong, but like, does he even go to the right address? Like, I don't know. There's something in the logic of it all that there's a disconnect for me. Plus, when his body falls, I feel like the blood comes up before the sound of his body hitting the pavement.
It is
Uh,
very cartoonish stuff. I can't fight against the fact that Martin Sheen's death in this movie is really over the top in like a way that I don't think serves the movie. Also, like I rewatched the trailer and they like full on show that scene in the trailer, like halfway through the trailer. And I get that you can't tell that it's Martin Sheen necessarily, but Martin Sheen is dressed like that the entire movie.
he's
I'm
wearing
just,
a grandpa windbreaker.
yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, anyone who's watching the movie clearly can identify that that is Martin Sheen falling off of. But here's where I will. So your claim is, if I am correct, how I understand that scene, and maybe I need to rewatch it. I've rewatched it twice since we emailed last night. I rewatched it last night, and I then rewatched it again at work today. And if I understand that scene correctly, the reason they figure out that he is the rat is because he gets the address 413, but he still ends up showing up at 433. And they're like, how could you show up if you got the wrong address?
Right. I know that, and the guy who's been shot or whatever, and he's dying, and he knows. But I don't know. Like I just feel like when does he even go to the right address that he's saying that he's going to? There's something wrong with the numbers in this movie. I don't. There's something wrong.
I
Logic
agree. That's the moment of the film that I don't need.
timing
It's
of it
that
all.
guy's death, and then just like that little like reveal, and then he dies like 10 seconds later. I think you actually could have just straight up cut that. And there's a lot of this movie that is probably pure excess in a way that excess doesn't need. Listen, this is a movie that uses the needle drop shipping up to Boston and Gimme Shelter. I think Gimme Shelter is used
Multiple times.
at least twice for sure. And Dropkicks is used twice in this one. the the moment for me that I have a disconnect with this movie, and it's my biggest criticism of this movie, is the exact second that Frank realizes there's a rat in like his crew. I would automatically accuse the guy who's at one point training to be a cop right before he got on right on with them. That's my biggest disconnect with the movie, where I'm just like, you couldn't figure out the rat? It seems really obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the new guy, right? That's
It's
what
always the new guy.
I never. I just watched a movie. I don't know when this will air, but it's with Emil Hirsch coming out called Inside Man, and it's like, you guys don't know who the Inside Man is? It's probably the guy who just got there.
Yeah, and so this will air in September, so I'm hoping by then you won't be on any you should be able to talk about that movie. But that moment is my biggest disconnect in the movie. Is just like, I'm like, the whole idea that no one can figure out Leonardo DiCaprio as a rat is just kind of a oversight for me. I will say this movie has one of the greatest like 20-minute introductions to a movie. I think just plain out period. We already talked about the Jack Nicholson monologue that he has that's very profane, very racist, and it just colors this character perfectly. The introduction to Mark Wahlberg's character is probably one of my favorite Martin Scorsese introductions he's ever done in a movie,
Great.
because Wahlberg's incredible in this movie. And he's incredible in a way that doesn't feel, how do I say this? I think Wahlberg can be a really talented actor. I think directors have to utilize him properly. And I think the best two directors who have ever utilized him are Paul Thomas Anderson and Martin Scorsese. And then maybe who directs Patriots Day?
Peter Berg.
Peter Berg. I think those are the three guys that like Wahlberg should really stick with working like that type of directors, because I think that's when he works the best as a screen presence. I as as somebody who is familiar with the accent, listen, I have family in Boston, but I can't pretend that I know the accents really well. Are the accents too over the top in this movie, or are they just like the right amount of cheese?
Sometimes the accents are bad. Yeah, Baldwin and DiCaprio in particular. Sometimes it's like they're laying it on a little thick. But Wahlberg's and Damon's, I mean, they know just how to do it. To me, this is a great Wahlberg performance. This is like one of the great chip on your shoulder performances, because the whole time Mark Wahlberg is looking at these two fucking guys. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah. Oh, please. This is The Departed. If there was any
Looking
time
at
to
these
fucking
fucking
swear, swear.
guys, and he's saying, "I should star this movie."
I get that feeling too.
That's what he's doing. He's like, all right, you're gonna go with Leo and Matt Damon. You want to go with the two big stars? I'm gonna fucking steal the movie right out from fucking underneath them, and I'm just gonna go big. And I mean, he steals every scene that he's in. I mean, he dominates. He's a pit bull, and I love that he gets the final word in this movie as well. I feel like that's kind of like what got him to sign on, is like at the very end, like he's the one sort of left standing, so he can cast himself in his own head as the hero of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But you could just like, yeah, okay, I this is a Boston movie. I should be the fucking star of this movie. So watch this.
And you can see it because you really feel it with the Leonardo DiCaprio character of Billy in this movie, where there is a real gruffness to how Wahlberg is treating him. And that does feel like that energy that you're talking about, where Wahlberg is literally looking at him and he's like, this guy's not even real Boston. And that antagonizing that he does makes the movie so real. And there's so much of that in this movie. Famously, Ray Winstone and Jack Nicholson just did not like each other on set. And there's so much of that interaction throughout the movie where you feel some of the personal shit coming out from these actors. With this all said, my question for you is, what are some of your favorite scenes in this movie? Like, when you think of The Departed, what are the scenes that instantly you're sitting back and you're like, I'm having a great time?
I think a lot of it is that prologue. I love movies or shows where like the title card drops like 30 minutes into it or something. I don't know why I think that's such a big, bold, profound thing, because now it's kind of been overdone. But I remember when The Departed's dropped, and it felt like, oh, like that wasn't even like the movie. That was just like the prologue to the movie, and now we're getting the real movie. So I did love kind of just like that whole opening sequence. I love the scene where they break DiCaprio's the arm.
Hand or arm.
Yeah, the arm cast thing. Like all that stuff's great. I just even the way that he first introduces himself and tries to get in with the crew, by starting the fight and Frenchie is there to stop things. Like I'm the guy who tells you, which guys you're allowed to hit and all that.
Oh yeah, this guy's like
So
guy you can almost hit or something like that.
yeah,
It's a great introduction. You mentioned the music from this prologue, and this is the movie where I feel the most of Martin Scorsese's needle drops. Where listen, I love Martin Scorsese's choice of music. In this movie, it's a little overdone. And that's not to say like I don't love the music. And I think actually for 95% of this movie, it works really well. The Well by John Lennon, as then Jack Nicholson is talking about John Lennon in that scene. That's a little bit too much for me. And I don't think we needed the second Gimme Shelter music drop, especially because he's willing to use other Rolling Stones songs in this movie. But I can't deny that, like, when this movie starts and you get Gimme Shelter with Jack Nicholson just laying it out thick in this movie, and he is hamming it up to a way that I don't think Nicholson's always a ham. In this movie, he is having so much fun chewing the scenery as a villain. He hasn't been a villain in movies for quite a while before The Departed, so you can really just feel him going for it. And with that style, with that music choice, I can't deny it that yeah, while it's excessive, I enjoy it.
yeah, no, I think it's a great villain turn. It's not iconic in the way that The Shining is, or even the Joker is, but it is Jack just being like, I can just go for broke and chew as much scenery as I want, and there's coke and hookers and dildos and guns, and everybody respects me, and yeah, dude, this is like big Jack in his prime.
This is like the last great Nicholson performance we get because I think he follows this up with The Bucket List, and I think he retires basically post that. I don't think there's any other films between Departed, Bucket List. So this is like, to me, that's why this performance works for me so well, is the level of scenery that he's chewing, but also just
Last
like
hurrah.
what was
Yeah,
that?
it's his last hurrah.
It is. It feels so like an actor just saying "fuck it." Like I'll do whatever I want to do, and you can't stop me. And that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten from whenever Scorsese talks about this. Like, and I'm sure you know this. Like every decision that seems crazy in this movie that Nicholson makes as the character Frank is like a note from Nicholson. He's like, I think he brought the dildo to set.
Right, like that's his own personal dildo. I'm gonna need that back
Yeah,
after
exactly.
rapid filming. Here's the other thing. It's like I can see Jack taking a liking to Leo because I think that in many ways they're quite similar. Like Leo, my boy, come, let's have a drink after. But like, can you see him hanging out with Matt Damon? Because I can't. I can't really see Matt Damon like hanging out in Jack Nicholson's hot tub or whatever.
I agree. There's a level of mysterious sexiness to Leonardo DiCaprio that Nicholson was so good at oozing, specifically in the 1970s. Exactly that while Damon is, an actor that I love, I never think of Matt Damon as a sex symbol.
You're right. You're
And
very
he's a really good looking guy. Like God, like if I look like him
right.
in 25 years,
Yeah.
I'm living my best life. But he's even as good as he looks in movies. I never think of him as like this catch the eye, just absolute bombshell. And in this movie,
Has
in Departed,
sexual vibe. You're right. I never even thought about that so much with him.
yeah, and with in this movie specifically, you feel it because Scorsese plays with that. Like in this movie, Leonardo DiCaprio is really good looking, and Scorsese understands that, and he's using the camera to kind of enhance DiCaprio's sexiness. And every scene with Matt Damon, he kind of feels schlubbish, little bit of a geek. Just he always kind of has this feeling of he's a sheep in wolf's clothing. And
That's like his superpower in a way, whether it's the informant or air. Like, he plays a good schlub.
he plays a really good everyman. And when he does that, it allows the scenes where the moment that I mentioned earlier, where I just don't believe that Nicholson would allow Leonardo DiCaprio, that they wouldn't realize that Leonardo DiCaprio is the rat. I do fully believe that Matt Damon can like integrate into this police office and no one is suspicious of him because he does just kind of, he almost is wallpaper to some degrees in this movie, and he's really portrayed as inept. I had never actually realized until I rewatched it yesterday and then read some of the discourse about this movie that his sexuality is really loose in this movie, where it's kind of undetermined who he's into. And
Oh, Jack Nicholson.
no, sorry, Matt Damon.
Interesting. Okay.
I had never noticed it, but there's like scenes where he's one either really overcompensating. There's been a lot of writing whether Matt Damon is secretly, or this character of, and I'm gonna get the character's name right, Colin, is secretly gay in this movie, and he's in the closet, and like there's a little bit of that within this movie. The one scene that he delivers that I had never noticed before, and it's a scene that I actually remembered, and it's one of the best Alec Baldwin monologues in this movie. And it's such an over the top ridiculous scene. It's where they're at the golf course, and Alec Baldwin has like a terrible swing. Like, just I get it. I don't know how that's possible because I feel like Baldwin plays golf pretty a lot, but it's this line he has, and I'm not going to do the accent, but it's, marriage is an important part of getting ahead. Lets people know you're not a homo. Married guy seems more stable. People see the ring, they think at least somebody can stand that son of a bitch. Ladies see the ring, they know immediately you must have some cash or your cock must work. And and Damon follows it up with like one of the funniest line readings I've seen in a movie, where he's just like, "Oh, trust me, it works," and he's laying it on so thick. He's so overcompensating, and that's this character. He always has to make sure he is always trying to be so macho.
Right. I like when he's with the realtor, right? The realtor, like, you married, and he's like, just give me the fucking papers. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, there's these moments that he has throughout the movie, and it's really, a lot of this movie is a pissing contest between most of these characters, and specifically Wahlberg and Damon have it throughout. And there's always this, the thing that works so well about this character of Colin, played by Matt Damon, is at every scene he kind of gets beaten. Like, even in the scenes where he wins, you always feel like he leaves and he's just like pissed off. Like, he's just like, this went horribly.
Right. Right. He's always like, it seems like he's always begging Jack Nicholson, like, just give me one more chance. Like, I'll get him for you, you know? Like,
Yeah, it's such a good use, and I'm trying to think. I know Matt Damon has played villains before in movies. I'm I know, I'm trying to think what other ones that he's done it in. Interstellar is the only one that's coming to mind right now. And the School Ties movie, he plays the villain, I'm pretty sure as well. But I like this performance from Damon. It was a secret, like underrated performance of his that like, and I guess it's just because when I think of The Departed, I don't think of Damon as the star of this movie by any means. This is secretly one of my favorite performances he's given as an actor ever.
I think he is excellent in it. I don't think it's my favorite, but this is top tier Damon, as it is like top tier DiCaprio as well. It's like a
yeah,
good DiCaprio performance.
DiCaprio in this movie, and I'm glad because we haven't spent enough time with DiCaprio in this. This is one of the big things about this Oscar year that I don't fully understand. So he doesn't really campaign for this movie. He kind of sits out this Oscar race because he has Blood Diamond, which is a far more traditional leading actor role where he is the clear lead of that movie. And I'll be honest, I think had they actually like fronted him as like, we are going to put all of our support as this guy is the best actor in this race, I think he stands a formidable chance this year. I think he has a far better chance of getting nominated and winning for this movie than he did for Blood Diamond, which I know he gets nominated for, but I think he could have won this year. And I'm trying to think who wins this year. Is this the Philip Seymour Hoffman Capote year? Or is this the what is his name? Forrest Whitaker year?
I am trying to find it. I think it's the Forrest Whitaker year.
I think it is too.
Last King of Scotland.
Yeah, and I that's a good performance. I don't think it stands up to DiCaprio in The Departed in this movie.
All right, I've got it here. It
Okay, what
was
is it?
it was yeah, Forrest Whitaker, Peter O'Toole for Venus, Ryan Gosling for Half Nelson, and Will Smith for The Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, I
So
forgot this is the Will Smith year.
to me, this is the Gosling year. This is the year that Gosling sort of came out and was like, "Yeah, I'm for real, bitches."
This is one of the Gosling performances I haven't seen.
It's amazing.
What is it called again? Just so I can remember to
Half,
write that one down.
Half Nelson, where he plays a drug addicted teacher.
Yeah, that's right. I have this movie. I've had this movie on DVD for a hot
This
second.
was
So I
a
need
good year for movies. Little Children, Notes on a Scandal, Half Nelson, The Departed.
it's kind of
Little
crazy that the list ends up being 5 movies, with The Departed being my clear favorite of the 5, but the other 4 for Best Picture, I liked some of those movies, but I wouldn't call them like, if I'm correct, Little Children doesn't get nominated that year.
Oh, it didn't.
Uh, what is the Alfonso Cuarón movie, Children of Men? Is that this year? I'm pretty sure.
I think you're right.
Yeah, Children of Men doesn't get nominated. Borat is like another just big film of this year. That just
United
like
93.
United 93, just a Paul Greengrass kind of like just incredibly moving film.
These
Little
are
Miss
very
Sunshine.
good movies that you would never rewatch. I would never watch like United 93 again. I never watched The Queen again. But like these are solid movies.
Yeah, this is not a bad year in the sense that these aren't really high quality filmmakers making good movies. It's just like in this year, it is like, okay, of these movies that I go back to, I think the ones that I've seen the most that get nominated are The Departed and Little Miss Sunshine. I think is probably the film that I've seen the most after that. Oh, and Children of Men.
Yeah, Children of Men is probably it.
And this is the Pan's Labyrinth here too.
Yep. What dude? This is a year. Dreamgirls we haven't mentioned. The Prestige we haven't mentioned.
Oh God, this the Prestige year?
What has happened to the fucking movie business, Ben? Wow.
Can I tell you? We're gonna get into a tangent.
Devil Wears Prada.
Oh my fucking God!
Inconvenient Truth. When's the last time a documentary got people into the theaters?
Did you? Can we talk about your
Apocalypto masterpiece? Apocalypto.
Oh my God! Yeah, because so Mel Gibson passes on this movie to direct Apocalypto. He's supposed to be the Martin Sheen performance,
Wow.
and like, oh my God, I didn't realize how stacked 2006 was. And then 2007 ups it because 2007's the No Country for Old Men.
Right.
There Will Be Blood, Michael Clayton year. So we're just in like this really like incredible run. Can we talk about, since you brought it up, and I was going to hold back, but so I've been following your blog. How are you feeling this year about movies, just kind of in general? Like, are you satisfied?
I actually think there's a lot of good stuff, and I didn't even see like the top movies at Sundance. I didn't see the Cannes stuff. Obviously, I think it's going to end up being like a good year.
I'm feeling that way too, and I'm also struggling because I feel like, not that the big movies have let me down to some degree, but it's been a really good year for kind of these lower mid-budget tier movies, and the blockbusters are just shit this summer. I mean, this has been an astonishingly bad summer for me for blockbusters. I thought The Flash, which I know you were a little bit more positive on than I was, I thought it was garbage. There's been so many of these films this year, not just talking about the superhero films, but I it's not that I even think this year has been bad, because I think it's actually been a really solid year. I guess it's just that we don't have a Top Gun Maverick right now.
Well, we do as of today.
Yes, we do as of today, which I did get to see. I did see it Monday at an early screening, and I loved it. I loved Dead Reckoning Part 1. But like, it's still not Top Gun Maverick to me. And maybe it's just I'm spoiled.
No.
But I just kind of wish some of these movies were hitting a little bit. I still haven't seen Indiana Jones. I've been like,
yeah, but Oppenheimer could be the Top Gun Maverick for you this year.
That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping Oppenheimer, and I'm hoping Barbie, because I have them back-to-back screeners.
Are you hoping for Barbie? Like Barbie, come on. Like Barbie, you could. It doesn't matter that Greta Gerwig is directing it or Ryan Gosling is in it. Like It's a movie that's designed to sell toys. At best, it'll be okay.
I am hoping that it is solidly funny. That is kind of like my big hope for this movie, that I find it
For Gosling's
extremely
good.
entertaining.
They're going to be funny, but like people have their expectations. Just I think that they need to recalibrate. And I haven't even seen the movie. I'm just reading the tea leaves.
The Oppenheimer is the big one for me because I got so lucky. Nolan approved the Sacramento Theater for IMAX, the 70 millimeter, 16-mile film, 600 pounds. He approved the Sacramento IMAX for it. I'm just like, I have my ticket all set. And I'm like, please, please be the movie for me.
People are like, oh, I don't know, which movie should I see first? I think I'm going to see Barbie first. I'm like, listen, they could drop a nuclear bomb on America, okay, in between the movies, and you're gonna say the last movie I saw before I died was fucking Barbie. Life is short, buddy. You can choke on some popcorn, okay? See Oppenheimer first. That's what you do.
So I do have to admit, I am seeing Barbie first, but that's only because the screener is first.
That's fine. Listen, I mean, if other people are dictating when you see a movie, then you go, you take the invite or whatever. But like these people who are like, I don't know which to see first, you see Oppenheimer first, unless you're doing like a double header that day, right? But if it's like, if you're telling me you're at a film festival and you have to leave to go home, and Barbie and Oppenheimer premiering at the same time, and you only have one ticket, you go to Oppenheimer. Like, what are we talking about here, people?
I know that is how I feel. Where I'm just like, as much as I love Greta Gerwig as a filmmaker, and I'm a big fan of hers, obviously being from Sacramento, there's an even added layer of the Ladybird aspect of it. But we're also talking about Christopher Nolan here. Like the comparison is like not fair. Where we're talking about a director I really like versus maybe one of my top 10 favorite directors of all time. It's just tough competition.
But it's really not. The stories, one is the story of Barbie and living in the Barbie world, and then one is about the real world and the most catastrophic thing that ever happened in it. I mean, it's just like there's a disconnect for me, but we're getting off track.
Yeah, we are getting off track. I just had to ask you about it because I have been keeping up with your list. And I was actually kind of surprised. I thought you were going to be a little bit more critical of this year, but it seems like you're actually fairly positive on it so far. But getting back,
sorry. Current years, it's got some good stuff.
Blackberry's the big one for me. But going back to the film itself, I just wanted to hit on a few things. We talked about some of our favorite scenes, and I feel like we're still in like the first half of the movie. We talked about the some of the Nicholson stuff. For me, the moment that this movie where I am fully engaged, and we're gonna talk Dropkick Murphys, the first time we get to that scene where Wahlberg is talking to Leonardo DiCaprio, they basically explain you're going to jail for a few months, and you slowly start hearing the Dropkick Murphys theme come into the movie, and we get the hard cut to The Departed and them in jail. I'm like, this movie's excellent.
Yeah, game on.
That is the moment for me where this movie is. Let's talk about some of my other favorite scenes from this, and please feel free to jump in at any time. I had the what is it? One of my favorite line readings again from a movie is Mark Wahlberg talking about feds. Feds, they're like mushrooms, feed them like shit and keep them in the dark. Like just an excellent screenplay from William Monahan. What are some of your other scenes like in this movie besides like before we get to the ending, because that's obviously probably one of the most memorable scenes? What are these other scenes in this movie for you?
Besides the arm cast one in the prologue, I mean, I like the final scene with Dignam getting his revenge.
Yeah,
I like the rooftop stuff with Anthony Anderson.
I think the scene for me that is maybe my favorite sequence in the movie is where Leonardo DiCaprio starts having the panic attacks. Where it's that scene that you were actually the PA for that day, where he's under the bridge, he's telling Wahlberg and Sheen, like, he's like, you gotta arrest him, you gotta do it, like all this stuff. And they're like, we're building a case, and he's just full on losing it. And he's lashing out at Vera Farmiga. that's the moment again for this movie for me where I'm just like, that's the moment for DiCaprio for me. And he describes his performance as having basically, he's a character who's suffering from a 24-hour panic attack. And that's
Mhm.
the moment where I think he elevates as an actor for me, going back and I think confidently saying I've seen all of DiCaprio's films, especially up to this point for The Departed in 2006. Uh, this is the moment where he levels up as an actor for me, where I'm just like, oh, he's not just like the pretty boy. He's not the Titanic, like, because I think Gangs in New York, like, he hits it in moments, but he's not fully ready for it. I think Aviator is really working with DiCaprio's charm already. Departed is the moment where in this film where he's having the panic attack, where you're just like, this is a character actor, kind of the Brad Pitt cliche of it. He's a character actor in a sexy man's leading man's body. And that's the moment for me in this film where I'm just like, this guy's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great movie. It's certainly in the top half of Scorsese's filmography.
And as we keep going on, we talked about some of our favorite scenes. Who would you say is your favorite performance in this movie specifically?
Ooh, tough call. I mean, it might honestly be Ray Winstone. I love
Hmm.
his Mr. French. DiCaprio is amazing in it, and plus, I mean, Matt Damon's fantastic in it too. But there's something about Ray Winstone in this movie, particularly on the heels of seeing him in like Sexy Beast,
Mm.
uh, where I was like, holy shit, like this guy's amazing.
Yeah, he's a really great actor in this movie, and an actor that I was not particularly familiar with post The Departed. So this was a guy
Did
that
you see Sexy Beast?
I have seen Sexy Beast. It was one of these things where I had to look up who he was, and then I would go back and I'm like, oh, he's that guy in that movie. And I'm like, okay, yeah. But so for me, like the Ray Winstone performance is like kind of centric. I do think of The Departed. He's really great in this movie. The one that I really want, I think Vera Farmiga is extremely good in this movie. I just wish her part wasn't as much of a nothing part at scenes, because I think she is excellent. That first scene, and this is where the just the charm, the Goodwill Hunting of Matt Damon comes out, where he's laying it on thick for Vera, and she's totally into it. She is totally buying this thing where he's like, I'll arrest you right now to get dinner with you. Sorry about the Boston accent. That was horrible. But it's all of those moments for me where I'm just like, oh my God, her chemistry with Damon works so well. And then when she gets to DiCaprio, there's this danger to her sexiness that's really well utilized by Scorsese. I just,
Is
yeah, go for it.
is Damon like? Do you think that he's really like in love with her and falling for her, or is there some level of like manipulation? Like I got to keep you close to me because you could be useful.
I think he is, I think the whole part of Damon, and it's my theory for the ending of the movie, and I don't know if you'd agree. I think when he is out of the life, when Frank is dead, and like when DiCaprio's out of the picture, he's full on willing to just be a cop for the rest of his life. Like
Right.
I never read it as he's now trying to rebuild the gang. And I think this is a guy, because so much of this movie is troubled men searching for something. And in some cases, it's father figures. In some cases, it's like kind of just a childhood and a life. Damon, for me, this performance that he is, and I think you froze. Hang on. I'll let you come back. And we're back. That was my internet apparently just dropped out for a second, but we're back. We were talking about Matt Damon and Vera Farmiga. There's this moment where Vera Farmiga, like I was talking about, like she has this just absolute beauty to her. And we were talking about Matt Damon specifically, like whether we believed he was in love with this Vera Farmiga character. I do interpret this as love. I do, at the very least, maybe not love for her, but a love to have a normal life and like have this kind of upper middle class life. Like he now gets to be a cop in a big city with a beautiful wife. Like that's how I interpret it. So as it actually like physical, emotional love, I don't know. But as a, I do think he loves what she represents.
Um, she went to UMass, so I felt like she did all right for herself. You know,
Yeah, fair point.
for UMass grad, yeah, she did all right.
The fun thing about her performance is when she gets to be the love triangle for Leonardo DiCaprio, and DiCaprio is such a much dangerous character, it feels like. So that scene where they finally meet, where he's begging her for pills, and then they start their love affair. It's one of the few sex scenes that Scorsese has filmed in his uh, filmography. It's a really passionate scene. It's as a 14-year-old boy when I first saw this movie. It's a very exciting scene for me. Vera Farmiga is just
Poor
absolutely.
kids. I grew up with Color of Night. You grew up with The Departed. Oof.
I know I grew up with The Departed. With I think it's is it Comfortably Numb? I think it's the song they're making love to. I think it's
That's
like a
not.
live version of Comfortably Numb, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah.
it's a choice. In fairness, though, so I will say, in fairness to me, when you're growing up and getting that movie, I think the reason I see The Departed is because I had just seen Wolf of Wall Street, so I do at least get the Wolf of Wall Street debauchery of it all. So I do still have my experiences with it all. Like there is still sex in film. When I'm a teenager, it is weirdly vanquishing or vanishing, I should say, which is something.
Everybody's more puritanical and they like having a little secret, and that's why, look at OnlyFans.
There is, and it's something you've been pushing back on Twitter, and it's one of the reasons I love you on like just following you. It's one of the things that I just so respect about you. You call out the bullshit, and the sex scene discourse that we've had this past like 6 months is exhausting. I just can't believe like this is like what professional writers are writing.
It's kind of embarrassing.
It's
I just
such.
don't people aren't fucking anymore.
I just like I'm like, can we like grow up and just like acknowledge that like yeah, people like have disgusting fetishes and like that's what's being portrayed in movies, and like there are obviously cases where if something's done inappropriately on set or anything like that, that's a completely different case. But if it's two consenting actors agreeing to film something, it's like yeah, that's fine then, and we shouldn't be so weird about that. It's absolutely been driving me
I'm
insane.
very sex positive, but I'm probably the only film critic you'll find on Field. Used to. I did leave that app. I did let that one go.
Yeah, I know. I trust me. I've been seeing your idol tweets. I've been seeing you and the idol gang,
Yeah, exactly.
which has probably been like one of your most
Idol.
passionate defenses. Which, in fairness, I still haven't watched it. But
Part of it's just I like playing the contrarian,
you
but
you also love. It's one of my favorite things is when I see a tweet from a big guy or a big film Twitter person, and then I see your tweet following like 20 seconds later, and I'm just like, oh, that's intentional. I know exactly who he's responding to.
yes, exactly.
It's your best quality. Let's wrap up this podcast before I get us in trouble. Uh, let's focus on just some of the things that to just kind of wrap up this episode. So, like I said, this ending scene of the movie for The Departed, that's the moment that I remember from this, and it was so weird. Again, going back 10 years later after watching the movie for the first time, seeing this scene, and I'm just like, I knew what was coming. And so I was like, there's a part of me that's going to just be like, okay, I'm like totally not going to like be surprised by this. Like this scene's not going to work because I don't have that surprise element. And damn, dude, every time I watch this, I'm just like, that's impressive. Like that is such a perfectly executed scene with them on the rooftop with DiCaprio just shut the fuck up, punching him in the face or whatever he yells to him. It's just such perfect timing. I love this ending.
Yeah, it's a blast just to see them finally, physically share the same space,
Because this
because
is
they've
the
just getting via phones for most of the movie.
this is the only time we actually see them face to face in this movie, right? Like there's the scene where they're chasing each other, but like that's probably clearly they're not on
Maybe
set
this will
together.
become the Pacino De Niro heat scene, 20 years from now for DiCaprio and Damon fans.
Yeah, like it is. It is that just moment where I'm just like, oh yeah, this is like the only real scene where they meet up. The cell phone use of this movie, I love the flip phone aesthetic of this movie.
How
Just
would an iPhone have changed the game? That's what I want to know.
I can I tell you that was the part that I was also kind of at disbelief of when he's texting in his pocket. I'm just like, I don't know if people wouldn't notice that. That just seems like someone would notice him texting. And two, would he have actually sent anything? Because don't you, for that phone, you have to like double or triple click on the letters. This is my 25-year-old me not knowing a flip phone coming out. So I'm just seeing him do it. I'm like, that's impossible. That's a challenge. That's not happening.
I would type something in my phone and I would just hold it up in the air, and then a carrier pigeon would just take my phone and bring it to whoever I needed delivered to. Is this for you
Mm.
in Scorsese's top five?
Is this Scorsese's top five? It might be just because it's one of my first Scorsese films. So it might just get on there for the love of me, like discovering Scorsese through this film. I King of Comedy is my absolute favorite of his. Just bar none, that is my favorite Scorsese film. I think Departed is in that conversation. I'd probably have Goodfellas in that list. I think I would actually have Wolf of Wall Street in that list. I'm trying to think. Raging Bull. Yeah, I think Departed, if it's not top five, it's like 6 or 7. It works for me.
I agree. I wouldn't blame anybody for having it in their top five. I do think it's almost certainly like a top 7 or 8 for sure. I know Taxi Driver and Raging Bull have take up a huge space in his filmography, but I've actually always been partial to Mean Streets.
I know that was the other one that I was kind of flirting with. I'm like, does Mean Streets? I actually love Silence is another movie that just because of my own upbringing, that was a really emotional movie for me that I just quite love. But I think realistically, Departed is like 5. What's yours? Like, are you in that top 5 for Departed, or is
I
like
think Casino and Goodfellas are my two favorites, and then I probably go Cape Fear because there's something I love about Cape Fear, particularly everything with like Juliette Lewis.
mhm.
Um, Departed and Wolf of Wall Street are on like that next tier, and it's just a matter of those are the next two movies I may choose to watch on any
Mhm.
given day. But like, do Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, do they belong on the sort of tier above Departed and Wolf of Wall Street? I don't know.
It's this question that for Scorsese is, it's just like, because even Raging Bull for me, like, it's a movie that is arguably a masterpiece. It's just I don't love diving back into that movie. Like, I haven't done the rewatch for this podcast yet to rewatch Raging Bull, because I typically watch these films 2 to 3 times before I go on air talking about them. And
That one,
Raging Bull was the big one. Like, that and Taxi Driver are the two that I'm just like, do I really want to spend like 10 hours with Raging Bull? Even though I think it's an incredibly masterfully made film.
right?
But I just like, and same with Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver, I'm dreading because I did rewatch it maybe a month ago. And I'm just like, this movie is perfection. It is such an incredible screenplay by Paul Schrader. And yet, by the end of watching that movie, and it's only like an hour and 45 minutes, I just had a fucking terrible day by the rest of that day. Where I'm just like, my
That's
day's kind of fucking ruined because of it. And that's why I'm like, is Raging Bull really in that top 5? Because whenever I watch it, I'm just kind of like, I'm done, like, for the day. Like, I just feel like that's my activity.
Yeah, I wouldn't put Raging Bull in my top five, even though a lot of people think that's the best movie of the '80s. No, I mean and I get how I sound like. Oh, this guy likes Cape Fear more than Raging Bull, but it's like, yeah, that's the generation that I came up in.
And there's a rewatchability factor to it where I'm just like, if you're giving me a choice of I can watch one of these movies right now, I'm probably not choosing to put on Taxi Driver, even if I think the film is brilliant by all accounts. Jeff, before I let you go, we talked about personal top fives. Uh, for you, if there was somebody that you would love to see work with Martin Scorsese, like any actor or actress, who would it be? And it's
Jake Jill.
Gyllenhaal. Really? Gyllenhaal. Wait, has he never been in a Scorsese?
I don't think he has.
No, he hasn't. Oh, I love the pick. What's the pitch for Gyllenhaal in a
I just
Scorsese?
think Gyllenhaal is, the best actor of his generation. I think he is wildly talented and super intense, and he would do an amazing job for Marty.
I really like that pick. I don't know why I never considered. It's sometimes the thing where I just kind of consider some actors in like the pocket of other directors. And so for me, I think David Fincher, even though I think Gyllenhaal's only been in like one Fincher movie, but
Yeah.
I love the pick. And then again, before I let you leave, last question I have for you. Who is somebody that never got the chance to work with Martin Scorsese before they passed, that as a film fan you would love to have seen?
Ooh, so they got to be dead?
They got to be dead. And it can be anytime. So it can be completely out of era. If you're like Charlie Chaplin needs to be in a Scorsese movie.
All right. So I don't think that this guy worked with Marty necessarily. I think he was an absolutely amazing actor in the 90s who lost his way. And I think that he was capable of even more than what we saw. And Marty is the type of director who maybe could have given him something to play. And that was going to be Tom Sizemore.
Mm.
Like, could Tom Sizemore have played Max Cady and Cape Fear? Could Tom Sizemore have played Henry Hill in Goodfellas? Like, maybe. I don't know. And we'll never know. But, he was the kind of super intense, tough guy who also maybe had a little bit of a sensitive side he didn't get to show very often. And Marty, I feel like, could have done something with that.
I really like that poll. I'm trying to think of like any dead actors or actresses for me that I'm just like, I really wish they had made. I mean, I guess Heath Ledger is such an easy answer because you're just like, that guy's career got cut way too short. And it's just like, that guy would have probably been a lead of a Scorsese film eventually at some point in his career.
I've got another good one. So, like, on Curb Your Enthusiasm, you see Larry David,
Mhm.
pretend to be in a Scorsese movie and everything. And then I was thinking of someone like Steve Martin, because you ever see The Spanish Prisoner?
Is that his drama film? That like his one dramatic performance?
Yes, he did it with David Mamet. So it's a
Yeah, yeah,
David Mamet.
yeah.
So it's like seeing Steve Martin do Mamet. I made the leap. Could Steve Martin do Scorsese? And then, but Steve Martin's still alive. So then I thought, what about Robin Williams? I would have liked to have seen
Yeah.
Robin Williams do something with Scorsese. That could have been great. Like maybe King of Comedy. Who knows?
That's a really good poll. I think mine and this, they're not dead, but I just, due to their circumstances, like we just wouldn't see it. I would have loved a Bruce Willis performance in a Scorsese film. And I don't even know what that fully would have looked like, but my favorite thing about about Bruce Willis is when he was willing to let other actors, let other directors direct him and just like really just become a character. And I think that's why I love Moonrise Kingdom so much, is because of Bruce Willis. And I just wish we had like one, even if it was like a gritty cop movie or if it was something else. There was such a charisma to, there is such a charisma to Bruce Willis that I wish we had gotten to see him star in that, because he does so well even with Tarantino.
It's the thing, you don't know what you got till it's gone. So everyone who took Bruce Willis for granted in the last few years of his career, they're gonna miss him when he's gone. Philip Seymour Hoffman is another one who would have been amazing in a Scorsese movie.
Yeah,
I mean, did you see Before the Devil Knows You're Dead?
I have seen it. It's been years though.
Yeah. I mean, he does a great job working with Lumet in that one. So I think he would have brought it for Marty too. So those are my picks.
Mine's of an actor that I'd still like to see is, I don't think Costner's ever been in a Scorsese movie. And he just like, he has a, sometimes he has a real meanness to him as an actor that I kind of just wish was explored. And I just rewatched JFK a few weeks ago. And I'm just like, Costner is so good in this role. And I wish he allowed himself to be directed by like more auteurs, because he doesn't always pick the best projects.
Mm.
And I wish he had gotten, I wish he had, I'm hoping in the next few years, maybe he's in one of those. Because even when he pops up in like Molly's Game for like 10 minutes, I think he's great in that movie. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my pick. So with that all said, that is the end of the show. Jeff, I want to thank you so much for being on The Departed with me.
Fucking Departed, baby. Thank you very much for having me and for not, treating me like a fed and,
Yeah, it's beating you shit and keeping you in the dark. You were in the dark there for a hot second though with some of the
I
lighting.
was, forgive me. I then I looked at the screen. I was like, damn, I got to go turn on a fucking light.
Jeff, it's always an honor to have you on the show. Like I said, you're one of my favorite guys doing it in Hollywood right now as film critic slash pundit slash whatever you call yourself.
Yeah.
It's always an
Thank
honor to have you on. Where can the people find you?
The Sneider on Twitter, if you dare, and then lamag.com, usually once a week with a brand new film review. So thank you guys so much. And also bunkcaptain.com. That's my brother's site. I want to throw him a little plug because his shit's blowing up right now. He makes like labels for summer camp.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Before you leave, because you didn't promote it, and I'm always going to make you promote it, your blog. Because, like I said, it's one of my favorite resources on the internet.
I forget to do all those. Okay, yes, I have FYC. I have the podcast with Scott Manson, Perry Nemiroff. I've got my podcast, The Hot Mic, with John Rocha, that you should all listen to. And then I've got my blog, theinsnider.blogspot.com. Yes, that's right. I still have a blog spot, but I'm not giving it up for anybody. I'm not on Letterboxd like all the other cool kids because they have to go and do what everybody else is doing. I don't need to be on Letterboxd, okay? I have a system that works for me. I rank out of 4 stars, not 5 stars, which is an insane British thing. That's Roger Ebert did not give 5 stars to masterpieces. He gave 4 stars. That's what we do at the insnider.blogspot.com. Thanks for reading.
I should hang out with you more because since the last time we talked, I have converted to the 5-star system and I am on Letterboxd.
You're fired.
Jeff, always an honor. Like I said, this blog site that he has, it's one of my favorite resources. This gives me basically my list of movies that I should watch for the rest of the year. Because while I don't always agree with you, I always respect your opinion. And when you have a movie in your top tier one, the standouts, that's an instant on the list. Every time, every year when I'm going through at the end of the year, I'm like, okay, let's just make sure I
appreciate it.
Sneider's standouts. Jeff, always an honor to have you on the show. Thank you all for listening to this episode of The Departed. We'll be right back for tomorrow, what is after The Departed? I think it's Shutter Island. I think we're doing Shutter Island tomorrow with the writer from The Onion, Spencer Roth Rose. Apologies, Spencer. He'll be on the show for Shutter Island. Thank you all for watching. Take care and bye-bye.